What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis here with a live free agency preview. I went live for the draft when it happened. I said, you know what? Free agency is about to start on Monday, pretty much. We already got Kawhi Leonard opting out of his contract to become a free agent with the ability to sign a 4-year extension with the Clippers. We got the Miami Heat declining Iguodala's $15 million. So he'll be eligible to be a free agent and he'll be able to sign with another team. We also got Kyle Lowry. People been asking me about Kyle Lowry for a couple weeks. Kyle Lowry been running around getting interest from every team, whether it's a young and rebuilding team like the New Orleans Pelicans. He's been getting a lot of love from teams like the Miami Heat, who can use a point guard since Dragic been a little beat up and toe up during the regular season and had a huge playoffs last year in the bubble. Ended up getting a couple injuries that ended up knocking down his value a little bit. He went from being a candidate for sixth man of the year, and then obviously he ended up having a down year this season. The Heat do have free agents where they got guys that they can keep that might get overpaid by other teams, or they might lose some pieces here and there. They've been willing and dealing for a while now and trying to find a way to win a championship. They made a huge commitment to Bam Adebayo, who has gotten better every year of his career so far. Hard worker, one of the best two-way players that we have in the league. Still has potential to get even better with his ability to have athleticism, can finish around the paint, just needs to get a little bit tougher, a little stronger when going and being a little bit more aggressive for help. Jimmy Butler was a good pickup for them. People thought they was crazy. People didn't believe Jimmy Butler could be a franchise guy. People didn't believe that Jimmy Butler can be the number one option. He was able to help them get to the finals, force a game 6 against the Los Angeles Lakers, and they all pretty much came up short, even though they was beat up and tore up throughout that playoff run. But now they're trying to make another one. Bam's still getting better. Jimmy's still hungry, one of the hardest workers in the NBA, one of the best two-way players, was able to become an all NBA player again this season. People didn't look at Jimmy Butler as that type of guy when he got drafted, but he obviously became that guy for the last couple seasons, even in Minnesota, even his last couple years in Chicago. And he still don't have that 3-point shot that you would love for him to have, but you gotta like his heart. You have to like that he cares, and you have to like a teammate that gets on you, demands greatness, and will go out there and do it himself. And that's leadership. And I feel like Jimmy Butler has been criticized for that. But you lead the best way you know. You only know how to lead the best way you do. And we'll see if Miami can get over that hump and win the championship. It's going to be tough. The East got a little crowded. You obviously got Philly trying to make another move, trying to move off Ben Simmons. That's been one of the hottest topics since the playoff failure that the number one seed Sixers went through. And Ben Simmons hasn't found a partner just yet. Still stuck in Philly. I would hate to see him play next season in Philly when you got guys calling you out, whether it's the coach, whether it's Joel Embiid, the franchise player. There's no way I can really want to stay there if I'm looking at it from Ben Simmons' perspective, especially when I'm having an all-star season the last couple years, all NBA defensive season, and he's on pace to be a Hall of Famer in his young career already. And you want to continue success, you want to continue to build upon that. And even though he's not scoring, even though he's not shooting, he's still a solid, well-rounded player for the most part, and one of the best perimeter defenders that we have. And you need guys like that, and they're always valuable, especially when you have his playmaking and athletic ability too. And with him already being locked up under a contract, a team would love to add a player like that. But this Philly, they still trying to compete for a title. They're not trying to rebuild. They're not trying to trade them just to trade them. They're trying to get something that can help them now, get something that can help them continue to contend in the East. And we'll ultimately see what Philly eventually trade Ben Simmons for. You also got to look at it from the Brooklyn Nets. They had a decent draft, filled some type of holes that they had on the roster. They still got Kevin Durant, who showed that he's still one of the best players in the league. Harden showed that he's still probably the best shooting guard in the league outside of Doncic, if you count Luka as a shooting guard. And Kyrie continues to get injured every year. Last year, he goes down in the playoffs before it starts, and he misses the rest of the season in playoffs. And this year, he has an All NBA caliber season, which he got the award, another All Star season for him, but goes down again in the playoffs. And Kevin Durant didn't have enough. They go down to the champions, the Milwaukee Bucks, who are trying to repeat. They have a decent roster. Dante DiVincenzo will be healthy coming back this season. That's going to be important. Brent Forbes might be gone, but they have their main core intact, which is Brook Lopez, Giannis, and Chris Middleton. They locked down Drew Holiday early last season to his extension, and he ended up playing a little bad offensively, but was able to play elite defense throughout the playoffs, and that really helped them get over the hump. Injuries helped, but they had to still finish the teams off and beat them, and they ultimately was able to finish the Phoenix Suns off in 6. Giannis becomes a champion, becomes one of the greatest players that we ever seen. And Middleton still trying to get some more All NBA All Star teams under his belt so he can possibly be a Hall of Famer too, which still is up for discussion depending on how he ends his career. You also got other teams that's trying to grow and improve and get to that championship level. You got teams like the Pelicans and Memphis that's still trying to grow season their youth a little bit and still make the playoffs. And even though those teams are far away from being championship teams, they still trying to get that experience, still trying to go out there and play hard and win. And, I feel like Memphis has done that the last 2 years, and the Pelicans are trying to get back to that and do it consistently. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out. Didn't have the greatest draft, but filled the need that they needed. But they still need a little bit more talent. They opened up the cap space so that way they can sign a player or trade for one. And we'll see what the Pelicans do with that $30 million. That's a lot of money, especially with Zion still under his rookie contract. Same with a lot of other players that's on the roster, getting out of that Steven Adams contract where he was just a solid player, never really fit, never really played well enough to warrant the contract that they gave him when they traded for him. They gave him an extension, and he never really lived up to it because he just never was an amazing rebounder, never was an amazing scorer, and never really fit with Zion and Ingram. So they're going with Jonas, and we'll see what he does. Coming off one of his better seasons, he went to Memphis and had his best seasons. Missed out on the championship with Toronto, but he was able to get his long-term deal and was able to put up some decent numbers and show that he can be more than just a screener, passer, and dunker. He can post, he can score, he can hit some mid ranges and some push shots. And, Memphis got the best out of him. And now they're trying to see what they got with Zaire Williams, a guy that they went and got at 10, has huge athleticism, can really potentially be a spacer, scorer, and a guy that can possibly even be a little bit of a playmaker. He's years away, but he does fit the timeline of Ja Morant. He does fit the timeline of Jaren Jackson. They all in the same age group, and they all do fit philosophy-wise. They do fit together, but a lot of those guys still got to work on their skills and develop their experience, and that comes with playing in the NBA year after year. It looks like Ja Morant and Jaren like playing with each other. It looks like they're going to be competitive. They have a lot of depth of young talent, have some veterans on the roster, and they have been real good. So the Grizzlies have been better than I thought the last 2 years, and that's a good sign for Memphis fans as they've been hungry, they play hard, and even though they need a little bit more of a scoring punch, maybe they get that in Zaire Williams in the future, then they can be dangerous, especially if Ja Morant can consistently knock down that three ball. It's going to be lights out. And if Jaren Jackson can actually not foul and play good defense without fouling and still give us that 3-point shooting with a little bit of some mid-range and some interior scoring, they can be very dangerous down there in Memphis. And that's what they're hoping. Obviously, you look at a team like the Celtics, my Celtics, not happy right now. We get rid of Kemba, get Al Horford, not jumping heads over heels over that. We ended up getting Josh Richardson at his lowest point. He wasn't good in Philly, wasn't good with the Dallas Mavericks. And unfortunately, now we have him. We use our mid-level exception to get another wing. that's not really a great shooter or scorer. So I'm not really jumping over that. We have to see what they do with Evan Fournier. They picked him up and wanted to re-sign him. They was able to open up some cap space in that Kimba um, trade to be able to bring back Fournier, and they wasn't able to agree on an $80 million deal. Maybe we lose them for basically nothing, and then we just stuck as a mediocre team unless another move comes where we can get better. Jaylen Brown continues to improve, but he's coming off a wrist injury. Don't forget that. Jason Tatum showed that he can score with the best of them. Still got to improve his consistency. Still got to improve his efficiency, but he's very, very young, and he's already been an all NBA caliber player the last 2 years, and that's what you want. And I can't complain about that. So my Celtics not looking like a championship team right now, but still looking like one of the better teams in the East. You obviously got Philly that's trying to figure out that last piece to get to go with Big Bede and try to get them a ship. They was able to overachieve in the regular season, but got beat by a disappointing loss to the Hawks. Nobody really thought that the Hawks could beat Philly, and they was able to get it done. They was able to kill the Lion. They was able to kill Goliath. Little Trae Young ended up getting DeLon Wright, which they ended up trading Tristan Thompson, which they didn't need. They have so many forwards. Just drafted another one in Jalen Johnson, and they really rather have DeLon Wright than another forward. So they get rid of Tristan Thompson quickly, get another guard that can give them some punch, especially if they lose a guy like Lou Williams or something. They still got DeLon Wright for a little bit, who has been a solid player in the NBA and a rotation player. And, another guard just in case Trae Young goes down. They still have a little bit more. We got to see what they do with the rest of their free agency. Obviously, John Collins is huge, as he has been a big part of their team with his rebounding, his ability to space the floor, post up a little bit, and also hit some perimeter shots. Has been a good fit offensively with Trae Young. They have been a tough team to defend, especially with Nate McMillan as their coach. They also improved their defense a little bit with Nate McMillan. He's going to have a full season with this team. Maybe they become better than what we thought, even though they were a surprise team and where they finished and what they did in the playoffs was really overachieving to me. But you got to give credit to them for working hard, playing together, and believing in what Nate McMillan was preaching and showing in practice, and they bought into it. Something that they couldn't do with Lloyd Pierce, but they was able to do with Nate McMillan. So I look at that as a good thing for the Hawks. They going in the right direction. Still got to see what they get out of DeAndre Hunter. He was beat up and toe up in the regular season and in the playoffs. Didn't get to see enough of him. Hopefully he can rehab, add a little bit more to his game, become a little bit better defensively. Same with Cam Reddish. He showed some signs that you want to see. Hit some threes, hit some tough ones, defended at a high level, was energetic in the playoffs. You just hope he can stay healthy and be that guard that can really give you shot creation, defense, and three-point shooting. That'd be the ideal player for Trae Young and John Collins. Clint Capella really had a solid season, probably all NBA fourth team, to be honest, but he played very well. People didn't know what to think. He bought into his role with the Hawks, was able to finish around the rim, was able to be a solid defender for them, and really excelled. And Atlanta was the perfect trade, for them. He was a little beat up when they got him and fit perfectly with his first season with the Hawks already. So the Hawks look like a dangerous team in the future, especially if their wings can develop into something special. Obviously, the veterans that they brought won't be there long term. That's why they brought them in to win a little bit now to keep Trae Young happy, who will be a max player in the future once his contract is eligible. I don't see that being the debate right now, as he's already been an all-star and one of the best guards and offensive players in the league and showed out in the playoffs, hitting game winners against the Knicks, helping them rally against the Sixers and win, and giving some competition to the Bucks with them being injured, and also with him winning game one against the Bucks in Milwaukee. So keep an eye out for the Atlanta Hawks. They're dangerous, and they're a team that's one move away or one development away from being a scary team in the NBA. You also got to look at Toronto. They get Scotty Barnes. They still got Van Fleet, who didn't have the best season. I don't like Fred Van Fleet at the shooting guard position. I have continued to say that. shot 38% from the field, which was one of his worst years, and that's not really what you want out of your shooting guard. Struggled to score, shot decent from three, 36%, which is about average. Had a down year. You can say the same for Pascal Siakam. Didn't really have the improved shooting that you wanted from him. Didn't really lock down defensively like we thought that he could, and never could really be that bucket that he was 2 years ago when they made the playoffs without Kawhi Leonard. Maybe Scotty Barnes can be developed like OG into a guy that can be switchable, play multiple positions, being able to stretch the floor, make quick decisions, and punish defense for overhelping or rotating. If that happens, then Scotty Barnes could be a huge pickup for them. Obviously, they went up. They rather have a wing than have Jalen Suggs, as they chose Scotty over Suggs. You look at a team like Denver, they still trying to figure out what they're going to do. They got Michael Porter Jr., who had a decent playoff. Aaron Gordon kind of was mediocre to me in the playoffs, never really was able to be that third option when they needed him to be offensively. And you look at the fact that Jokic was MVP. Nobody thought when he got drafted that he'd be an all-NBA player, let alone an MVP. Give him credit to his work ethic. Give him credit to his ability to adapt and adjust and become one of the most dominant players that we have in the league. And he's been in my top 10 for a while, and this year he probably moved up to top 7. That's how good Jokic has been. And Denver was dangerous. They got off to a slow start, was able to end pretty high in the Western Conference, even getting home court advantage. And they made it out of the first round. They beat Video Game Dame without having Jamal Murray. Most people, including myself, picked the Nuggets to lose that series. And they was able to get that done, showing you how good this team can really be. Just because they're young don't mean they're going to win the title. That's something that we continue to learn throughout history. Them young up-and-coming teams that become contenders. Sometimes they get over the hump. Sometimes they don't. That's something that's interesting too. It's going to be kind of fun to see what this team decides to do with this roster. They got some things they have to figure out still to get over that hump. And I like what I've been seeing so far out of Denver. They've been very, very competitive so far. So I'm interested to see what the Lakers do. People didn't like the fact that they made the Westbrook trade, which is hilarious because most people would love to get an all-star, and they got one. Even though Westbrook wasn't an all-star last year in Washington, he played like it as the season was ending. Didn't really shoot the ball well again in the playoffs, struggled to get a bucket, struggled to create efficient shots, something that's been handicapping and stopping Russell Westbrook from being truly great. Don't really space the floor for AD. AD has been known as a guy that hasn't been a great three-point shooter. Neither has LeBron, neither has Westbrook. That's going to be something they're going to have to figure out in free agency, how they need to finish up this roster so they can go back to winning ships in LA. They're going to be a team to watch out in free agency as they still have the Schroeder move to make. They still got some other guys that they got to figure out what they're going to do with them. Taylor Horton-Tucker is a guy that a lot of people thought would be traded for Kyle Lowry before the trade deadline was over. He ended up not getting traded because they didn't want to get rid of him. Now he's eligible for a contract extension. I don't really think he's a max player. He showed some signs in preseason going at Kawhi Leonard. Lakers fans was happy. Lakers fans was feeling it, and I don't blame them. Seeing a guy on your team that's not scared of the big moments, not scared to go at the best players, dunking, shooting, taking over games. But that was it. Because once the regular season started, you didn't see too much of Taylor. He didn't really do much. He didn't really have that season that really will warrant him to be able to leave LA. Team still was interested in him. They see his potential. They see what he brings to the table. So as the Lakers, as they chose not to trade him. But, he's going to be interesting to see how many years they give him, how much money they decide to give him. And with them getting rid of Pope and other guys, maybe Taylor can start and be a bigger part of this team. And that could be something that could be interesting to watch. Is Taylor Horton-Tucker as good as they believe? Was he worth keeping over Kyle Lowry, who can help you win now? Dennis Schroeder did not have a great playoffs, didn't shoot the ball well, wasn't aggressive enough, really was nothing in the playoffs for them. And maybe Kyle Lowry helps hit some threes, give him some floor space, and being able to help LeBron play off the ball a little bit. I like the Kyle Lowry fit better than the Russell Westbrook fit. And Kyle Lowry would be cheaper. He does shoot better, a better defender, and a guy that's not ball hungry and want to take a lot of shots either will be an identical fit, probably a upgraded shooter that can shoot. But they decided to go with Russ. We're going to see if that's going to work out for the Lakers. You look at the Spurs. They're another team that's interesting because they ended up going with Joshua Primo. They have a bunch of guards already. We have to see what they're going to do with DeJounte. We're going to have to see what they do with Lonnie Walker. We're going to have to see what they do with Derrick White. They have a lot of these guys locked up already. Still got to figure out with DeMar DeRozan, a guy that y'all been asking about a lot. He's been in trade rumors the last 2 years. I told you guys that the Spurs should probably have traded him a little earlier, even though they came close to making the playoffs as they was in the play-in games. But they fell short and didn't make it. So you probably rather get rid of DeRozan to get something back. Maybe they didn't get the deals they wanted or the offers they wanted, but they will get the cap space as if he leaves. They can just use the cap space on somebody else or keep it and re-sign another one of their young players in the future and do what San Antonio does. So DeMar DeRozan is another guy you got to keep an eye out on in free agency, as he still showed that he can be a 20-point scorer, showed that he can be a spark plug off the bench. If he wants a reduced role, showed that he can be a starter still in this league. If he wants to get that role too, definitely said that he would consider taking a pay cut if he wants to play for a championship, and that's what you usually have to do at his age. So he's willing to take a reduced role. He's willing to take less money, and that's what you want to see out of a player like DeMar that hasn't had a title, hasn't played in the NBA Finals, and that'd be a beautiful thing to see because I feel like DeMar exceeded expectations, becoming an All NBA player and a multiple-time All Star in the NBA. And wasn't really known as a guy that can shoot or score or pass really when he got drafted and was able to, develop those skills and become one of the best scorers in the league in Toronto. He didn't really have crazy success in San Antonio, but he was still a 20-point scorer at worst. And you still value those guys highly. So we'll see what they do with him and where he decides to go. People also want to know about Andre Iguodala since he got declined by the Heat. A lot of teams are interested in Andre Iguodala. Didn't really place that much, and Miami didn't really do much for them. But wings are a premium. He's going to get picked up. He understands the game, knows how to play in big games, and still can defend solidly. So somebody can use him off the bench like Miami did. Miami made the right decision because you don't want to pay him $15 million for the production that he was giving you. But if you can pay him $3 to $7 million, that's a whole lot better. And I think he'll be worth that, depending on what the team needs from him. Dallas is interesting as Luka contract is basically about to come up, and he's going to be eligible for that super because he made the All NBA team the last 2 years. Able to get first team on top of that and be multiple time All-Star in the Western Conference, helped the Mavericks make it to the playoffs the last 2 years in the Western Conference and was able to get them a top 5 seed in the Western Conference. People been taking shots at Kristaps Porzingis the last couple years. He's not really a 2, he's really a 3. He's overpaid, he's overrated. But one of the reasons why Dallas works is because Porzingis is at the three-point line. That allows Luka Doncic to handle the ball and be able to go to the paint so freely, play in the pick and roll with other bigs, because Porzingis is keeping the other big out of the paint, so Luka can do all that crazy stuff. And they just didn't have enough consistent shooting. Josh Richardson was a terrible pickup. They should have just kept Seth Curry. You also look at the fact that Tim Hardaway Jr. had games where he was amazing and games where he disappeared. That's something that they got to look at if they want to bring him back. He's definitely not worth the $20 million. He's worth less than that if he can't score consistently. They're gonna, have to figure out what they're gonna do with him. Porzingis don't look like he's gonna be moved. Most trades for Porzingis don't really make sense. So I don't really see Porzingis being moved. I see them keeping him. It's gonna be tough for them to add that third player. honestly, without them giving up some of their depth. Maybe they ain't the worst case scenario because there's so many good quality NBA players that's not even on the NBA roster now. Plus, you got the undrafted players too. So maybe they can pick up some role players easily and just try to fill that third spot with somebody else. They gonna have to figure that out if they want to win the title with Luca. Luca's not gonna be satisfied getting put out in the first round every year, even if he's getting paid a lot of money. A lot of people liking Bradley Beal. They confused. They said his team isn't that good, and now that Westbrook is gone, we thought that you'll be going before Westbrook, but Westbrook left first. Now they got a lot of guys that's hungry that want to prove themselves. And we also seen them linked to Spencer Dinwiddie. He is a guy coming off a ACL injury, so you got to keep that in mind. He won't be as good at the start of the season, may not even be playing when the season starts, but we know he can get buckets. We know that he can play, so he's going to get paid just because of that. But how many years, how much money do you really want to invest in Spencer Dinwiddie? And that's going to be the key to see that. And we got to keep an eye out for that. Also, you got to look at it from another perspective. You got to look at a team basically like the the Blazers. They're in a situation where Damian Lillard isn't happy and he wants moves to be made, but we haven't seen any moves made so far from the Portland Trail Blazers. They have been rumored with this, rumored with that, but nothing has happened. We have heard multiple people saying that Damian Lillard wants out, but he's still on the roster. So this is a team that we're gonna have to keep an eye out. Maybe he do want to see them make moves. Maybe he do want to see what they do. But right now, I don't really see a legitimate way for them to get significantly better. That's the tough part for them. And we already heard that Nurkic don't really want to be there either. He doesn't have a lot of value because he's been injured every single year for the last couple seasons for the Portland Trail Blazers. And he does fit well and play well with that team. But can Nurkic really be your third best player? That's what we've been seeing. That's not going to be able to happen. We did see Carmelo Anthony be rumored to the Lakers. He wants to compete for a title. He's brothers with LeBron James, and he is a walking bucket still. Not as efficient as he used to be, but can still bring some effort and some energy offensively, especially if you're not going to pay him that much money or give up that much anyway. He still is a guy that can contribute and help your team. We also look at other teams that's still trying to make a mark, like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They didn't really get that guy in the draft. Josh Giddey is a guy that's raw. He still has years to go when it comes to development and being ready to contribute to winning at the NBA level. Shea Gilgis had a nasty injury, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be making over 100 million. So watch out for that when his time for his contract talks start. But they ain't really got much. They got Teo. He has potential, but nowhere near where he needs to be right now. Pokashevsky is unique, a unicorn, but physically he's not there. Offensively, he's far away. We'll see what he does when the season start. They got Big Baisley down there, but still need to work on his space and ability and finishing. They got obviously their shooters like Lucien Dort improved as a shooter, but still hasn't really became an all-around player for them. So they need a little bit more and I thought that that's what they were trying to target in a draft, but I didn't really see them get that because Giddey gives you some excitement, he gives you some potential, but he's just not the offensive player that you need right now. And it looks like they're going to have another losing season, and I feel like they didn't get a star um, now in the draft. They didn't trade up, they didn't trade down to get that star level player. And if you're a Thunder fan, that's something that you're going to have to probably watch another season that's terrible for the Thunder, but maybe you get another top five, maybe you get a top five pick or something, and it pays off by getting a franchise caliber player in next year's draft, which we'll be talking about in a couple months when that happens. We also look at some of the bad teams too, like the Thunder. You got to look at uh, teams that's at the bottom, like the Minnesota Timberwolves. They had a guy that was in contention for Rookie of the Year, and Anthony Edwards, who struggled at the start of the season, was coming off the bench. Then they started to let him start. He showed flashes of possibly being a 25, 30-point scorer, being able to shoot the three off the dribble, off screens, can knock down some mid ranges, can get to the basket, can dunk, get out in transition, has the body and the athleticism to be a two-way player if he's locked in and focused and want to be one, which we still will have to see as he's only a teenager. Towns still showed that he's one of the best offensive bigs in the league. Really showed his maturity, letting Anthony Edwards shine, set the screens, was unselfish, and he made Anthony Edwards like, you the man right now. And you don't really see veterans do that, especially veterans that's as good as Towns, especially when they traded for D'Angelo Russell and those type of guys. I expect Minnesota to be bad again, but they really got to figure out this roster and who they want to keep, who they want to move, and what they want to do. And we got to see what's going to be next with Anthony Edwards, because he showed a lot of signs when the season was at the middle and the end. And then he really showed some eruptions. And maybe he becomes more consistent and more better IQ wise and scoring wise. He was able to mix it up a little bit too as the season was ending. Maybe he gets off to a significantly better start as a sophomore, and that helps them become better in general, even though the league is getting better. I feel like Anthony Edwards is a guy to keep a watch out for because he has superstar potential written all over him. We just have to see him bring it all together, and that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. You also got to look at other teams like the Knicks. They didn't really do much in free agency, and teams was surprised because this was a team that really wanted to win a championship, really had the fan base going crazy, had them just out of this world going crazy, and they ultimately fell short to the Atlanta Hawks. Even though I picked the Hawks to win that series, they was able to play D. They was able to make games competitive. They was able to erupt. Derrick Rose had a good year for his game. Showed that he had a lot left in the tank. He can really bring a good punch and still can penetrate, still can create his own shot. It was really a good resurrection season for Derrick Rose, honestly and truthfully, and that was good to see for him. Julius Randle, I thought that he probably wouldn't even be brought back or traded last season, was able to really become a name in the NBA. He was a highly touted player in high school and college, really didn't live up to it with the Lakers or with the Pelicans, and he probably was going to have another year, I thought, like that with the Knicks, and he had a complete turnaround, becoming an all-star, becoming most improved player, even though he did flop. Honestly, in the playoffs against the Hawks, he still had a season that's positive and something that can show you if you put work in and you continue to play hard and you demand yourself to be great and you strive for greatness, you can achieve it. He showed that he can be a better passer, better scorer. Didn't really rely on the post as he did when he came into the league. Was able to rely on finesse, was able to rely more on skill, and was able to score in multiple ways. And that's something that I didn't really see in Julius Randle until this season. And it was good to see that he was able to evolve and adapt to the NBA and have the type of season that he needed to have. And I was proud of him, and I'm glad that I was able to see it. Very good story for the league, but the Knicks still don't have that perimeter player. RJ Barrett showed improvement and growth, but they still need that point guard. I don't feel like they got that in the draft. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that in free agency, but they do have the cap space to do it if they need to, and they do need to go up another level because now that you made the playoffs, the fans going to want more. They're going to expect more. And as a player and as a guy that watched the NBA, it comes with the territory. So it's going to be interesting to see the moves that the Knicks made. They didn't do a lot in the draft. Didn't make any big moves. Didn't really get any big players besides a wing that can help them. But they also need a little bit more if they want to become from a playoff team to a contender. But Tom Thibodeau got those guys buying in. He got those guys loving to play and they competitive, but they still need a little bit more offense. And finding offensive players are easy. but you got to get the right ones that fit what you're trying to do and also can defend. They need two-way players because that's what they play in New York. But they just need a little bit more offense, and we'll see if they're able to get that in free agency. That's something to keep an eye out on. You also look at a team like the Pacers. They ended up finishing 34-38 in the Eastern Conference, had a chance to win a play-in game and lock up the eighth seed. Just didn't happen. Had injuries to TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon's second season in a row having a lot of injuries that kept him out. They was able to pick up some solid players in the draft. I predict them to possibly be a playoff team if they can stay healthy. Sabonis had an all-star reserve season, wasn't voted to get in, was able to get in because of injuries, but still show you that he's one of the best all-around bigs. Still need to improve his three-point shooting. Still need to improve his offensive game if he wants to become more dominant. He has to have a little bit more moves in the bag. He has to be able to score a little better from the perimeter. Really only dominate depending on the matchups and the players he goes against. If you want to be one of the best players, you got to dominate every matchup. And I don't feel like he got to that point yet, but maybe he can. If not, you're going to probably have to try to get a player better than him. I thought Warren would have a huge season, but he was injured, and he really killed that team because they got nothing out of him, and that really hurted them for the whole season. They needed a little bit more scoring, and with Warren and those guys being injured for majority of the year, they just could never get it. The Charlotte Hornets, I feel like had a pretty good season. Ultimately came up short. They was in the playoff race the entire year. LaMelo Ball was able to become rookie of the year, and he really had a fun season, getting out in transition, making big shots, big plays. Everybody was talking about him, no matter what team he played against, how bad or good he played. He just had good publicity all year and really lived up to the hype. People really felt like he can be a special player, and he showed signs of that for the Hornets. And Gordon Hayward had a down season, had another injury riddled season, but still showed that he can really help them win. Still has the mid range game, still has a 3-point game, still has a playmaker and handle to be a solid starter and great player, especially given the right opportunity. And I feel like Charlotte got that for a small amount of time, and they're hoping to get more of it as his contract continues to grow to year two. That's something that you really want to see from him. Miles Bridges showed in growth. Terry Rozier was better. They got James Bouknight coming in there, gives them some size at that guard position that if he can shoot the three, can give them something that they're missing. I think they let go of Malik Monk, hasn't really lived up to the hype, hasn't really been able to be that lottery pick that they thought they was getting, show that he can be a rotation player, a guy that can come in and get you buckets, but couldn't really do it consistently, doesn't really play defense, and really was a bust, honestly, for the Hornets. Maybe he can get a fresh start and change his trajectory of his career if they don't bring him back. That's something to keep a watch out for. Also, got to look at the Chicago Bulls. They made the Vucevic trade. Vucevic trade came out of nowhere, and they didn't win. Getting him didn't help them win a lot. Zach LaVine had an all-star year. He became an all-star, one of the best offensive players in the league, was able to shoot the three, was able to play better defensively, not great, but better than what he was playing before. Showed that he can still take over games, can still carry the load. Kobe White hasn't been a player that we thought, can't really score, not really a point guard, can't really pass or set up teammates. So that's something that they should be looking forward to and to picking up in free agency this summer. Also, Lauri Markkanen has been a guy that people really thought could be good. This is a guy that was supposed to be a big that can stretch the floor, be a stretch forward. And he hasn't been able to be that because he's always injured. And his defense hasn't been there. His physicality hasn't been there. His rebounding hasn't been there. It has been a bust also. Showed that he can be a productive player, a potential starter, but hasn't been consistent, hasn't been the shooter that we thought that he would be at this point in his career, and just doesn't have the it factor. He's missing something mentally. He's missing something, and he's not the guy that we thought that he could be at this point in Chicago. And maybe they let him go or bring him back on a super cheap deal because he really didn't earn a good contract to me since he's been in Chicago. Maybe you bring him on 50, 60 million deal, $70 million deal and bite the bullet just to retain the asset to flip them into something else. Or maybe you just do a sign and trade and get what you can get back from and go in a different direction, or get a point guard. I think that's what Chicago should be trying to do. Satoransky got some trade value. They did win 31 games, so they wasn't far out the play-in tournament, and obviously they had some injuries around the ending of the season. Cleveland is another team that gotta look out for. They got Colin Sexton. They might be moving him. We don't really know yet. They also got Darius Garland having a healthier season than coming off the injury coming out of college. They also got Jared Allen. They got to figure out what he's worth, what they're going to do with him this summer. They also got Evan Mobley, who's one of the most versatile two-way players in the entire draft, has upside to be an all-star. And if you can get that in the draft, most people are not going to complain, especially when you get a guy that can defend. You don't really get too many two-way players in a draft, especially young ones, especially bigs. Now, most bigs are like Lauri Markkanen, more offensive based, but he has the ability to be a rim protector, a guy that can cover space, but also give you some potential shooting and some finishing ability if he bulks up and gets stronger. But overall, looks like a solid pick and a guy that they can really build around. I do think they should trade Colin Sexton. He's going to be the guy that can get them the most value. He's going to be the guy that can get them a potential wing that they do need to go alongside guys like Okoro and Jared Allen and Mobley and also Darius Garland. And if they don't want to pay him, what's the point of keeping him? You don't want to overpay on a guy you don't want to keep. Plus, he doesn't really make teammates around him better. Not the greatest facilitator. Got tunnel vision. That's something that I knew in summer league when I watched him play. But he's a bucket. Teams like guys that can shoot. Teams like guys that can take over. And Colin Sexton can do all those things and has proven that so far in his NBA career. Also, we got to look at the Magic. The Magic rebuild looks amazing. Having all these young players that has upside. Some have all-star potential, like Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz. If he's not the guy, you got Jalen Suggs now. Cole Anthony looks like a spark plug type of guy that can bring some attack and some aggression off that bench. RJ Hampton shows signs that he can be a guard that can really score, space the floor, possibly even be a ball handler in the future. They can use him as a starter or bring him off the bench. They also have Mo Bamba, who's going to be able to get more minutes. Now there's no Vucevic and those guys down there. We can really see what Mo Bamba is going to be. Can he be that spacing five, or will he be a bust, or can he really shoot? Can he really score? Can he really finish? We're going to see a lot of those questions being answered during this season with Orlando, and a lot of people wanted it. A lot of people wanted to see it, and hopefully we get a healthy season from Mo Bamba and he can really show us what he can be in the future. Detroit, they're an interesting team because they have Isaiah Stewart, they have Saddiq Bey, which was steals, productive players and skill set players and rotation players, and they have those now. Jeremy Grant had one of the best seasons. People called him Fugazi and crazy from leaving the team like Denver, who was on the cusp of being a championship team, to go to a rebuilding team in Detroit. But now that they got Cade down there, they got Killian, who showed that he was a solid defender as a rookie, which you usually don't see. But he's so far and so raw offensively that it's going to take him some years to really pay off as a pick. But they got time. They're not in a rush. They're not forcing it. They're not overthinking it. They're just getting quality players. Cade showed the ability to take over games. He showed the ability to be clutch. He showed the ability to be a facilitator, ball handler, guy that can play on, off the ball, score in the mid-range, score floaters, good free throw shooter, good three-point shooter off the dribble or catch and shoot. So that gives them something that they really didn't have outside of Jeremy Grant. Now they have two guys that can do it. That helps him, that helps Killian, and that helps the offensive build of this team. And, you know, with them filling out the roster with young players and veterans, this team could be significantly better. But then again, if they are bad again, you're not going to trip, as they most likely will get another top 5 pick to add with Cade, and then they can be very dangerous in the future. So Detroit fans should be happy. You get a potential all-star with Cade and a guy that teams are building the mold of those type of teams around. And now y'all got one in Detroit. Now y'all just got to build the right team and put the right pieces around them. And maybe y'all 3, 4, 5 years from now could be contending for a championship with Cade as your best player. Um, also want to talk about the Warriors. Didn't reach them yet. The Warriors are dangerous. You know, they got Steph, who had one of the most interesting and basically amazing seasons. Steph was must-watch TV this year. Every game that I watched, he was going for 30 something, obliterating some type of defense, embarrassing everybody that's trying to guard him. And it's fun seeing a guy like Steph in the league. The sad part about Steph, they didn't make the playoffs. You know, they had a fun season, had some interesting moments. Draymond was still showing that he's a great playmaker. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. We really don't know what to expect from Clay as he's just now being able to run and walk. Let's not put too much pressure on Clay. He still needs some time to play in practices and scrimmages. He still need to get his legs back. He still need to get some playing against some real competition. He still got to show that he can let that thing fly at a high level, which you just got to be a little patient with Clay, but we are expecting him to be better. Moses Moody was a good one. Jonathan Kuminga is a two-way player, potentially. If his offensive game can develop, he's going to be around more shooting with Steph, Clay, and those guys, so he should be able to have more space to operate and do his thing. We're going to have to see more Wiseman. They decided to keep Wiseman instead of trading him in the draft. He still has two-way potential, has the size, has the length, has the ability to be a spacing five, given the right opportunity. I just want to see him more consistent, more focused, more locked in, and caring a little bit more, and just show a little bit more of that touch. He was drafted for his touch in his field for shooting the ball, and we didn't see enough of that in Golden State. We seen a mediocre James Wiseman to bad. We want to see a good to great James Wiseman. Hopefully, he was able to get healthy. Hopefully, they can spend more time with him instead of being forced into a rush season. And hopefully, we just see a stronger, smarter, wiser, more patient James Wiseman that understands the game better. You know, you're not really going to get a guy like Wiseman with his type of potential, and they was able to get him. Just be patient with him, bring him along like they've been, be hard on him when it's necessary, and allow him to grow and learn the game the right way. And I feel like that's the best way to do it when you got a player playing on a competitive team like Golden State. And if they do decide to keep him, he still does have the chance to be the ideal center that they need around Steph, Clay, and Dre. He's just a teenager. So let's be a little bit more nice to him, and let's give him a little bit more opportunity, as he did get injured multiple times this season. We also got the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets had a beautiful draft. They was able to get a defender and Usman. They was able to get an offensive player and Sengun, who showed that he can be a guy that can put the ball in the basket at the center position. Only a teenager, so he can still grow and become a 7-footer. People say he's a little undersized, a little small, which is true, but he still has the ability to grow the next couple years to possibly be 6'11", 7 feet. Got good touch, can dunk the basketball, can finish around the rim, can be a solid rebounder, still raw defensively. Got some time and some patience with that, which they have. They got Jalen Green, who we all think is a potential superstar, a 25, 30-point scorer, athletic, can handle the ball, can create off the dribble, can shoot the three, whether it's in their face or off the dribble, can get to the basket, needs to get stronger, needs to get smarter of how he's attacking and how he's trying to go. But he has John Wall. People don't really like that because they know that John Wall won't be here long term. But he's unselfish. John Wall likes to share the ball. He likes to get out in transition, which would be fun to watch with a guy like Jalen Green. And John Wall can pick defenses apart, and he does carry defensively. They really didn't have a lot of talent last year. They got a little bit more. None of these guys are going to help them win right away, but we looking at the future. If the Rockets are bad again, which is a possibility, they can get another pick to add another piece to go with Jalen Green. They also do have Christian Wood, who was really beat up, had a disappointing year. You look at the numbers, and Christian Wood, he wasn't that bad, but he didn't play that much. They picked him up. He was supposed to be their big acquisition. He didn't play that much. He was injured a lot this year, and he did look good for the most part offensively, but had a down year to me. We expected a little bit more from him, and he really didn't deliver. The team that's the last is the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are an interesting team. They got Fox. Last year, they signed him to a $190 million, somewhere around their contract. Didn't become an all-star. Still is one of the guys that you see the potential. He's fast, a solid decision maker for his position, but doesn't scream superstar, doesn't scream franchise player. And that's what you really want in Sacramento. Bagley looks like a bust. I never liked him in the draft. I looked at him more as a role player, and you don't want to get a role player with the number 2 pick. Honestly, that's the worst case scenario. And that's what Bagley has been. He hasn't been a two-way force, has been nowhere near dominant offensively, hasn't really been dominant in the paint, hasn't really been a great floor spacer or three-point shooter from mid-range, doesn't really look good at all from that point. Harrison Barnes has been a good fit as he's been a switchable defender, has been able to knock down a three at an efficient level. The problem is he hasn't, really shown signs of being more than that. And you're stuck with that. Buddy Hield has been a bucket. He shoots the ball well, has been one of the best shooters in the league, has been able to knock down some mid ranges, has been able to get to the paint. Ultimately, still not that superstar that they needed. They found a way to build a solid team, hasn't really found a way to build a playoff team. Little far away from that. They're going to have to figure out how to get to that level, even if it's trading Fox and just putting Halliburton, or trying to figure out what they're going to do with Davion Mitchell, who gives them perimeter defense, something that they've been lacking, something that they don't have, but also gives them another guard. And eventually they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with this roster, how they're going to build it, how they're going to play, and who's going to be their franchise player outside of Fox. It's not Bagley, it's not Hield, it's not Barnes. So that's something that they definitely going to have to get together as an organization and figure out, do we want to continue to go this route? Do we want to go on a rebuild? Or do we want to trade Fox and some of these guys to get a guy? And that's what they're going to have to figure out in the future. Other than that, when I look at all the teams in the NBA, I guess the only 2 teams we really didn't talk about was the Jazz and the Suns. Those were the 2 best teams in the entire NBA, the only 2 teams to win 50 games this season throughout this whole entire season. And it was mainly because of consistency. The Jazz was able to shoot the ball well, able to defend at a high level, and they was able to have multiple guys that can play, make, and score. Bogdanovich was healthy, which he wasn't in the bubble, gave him more spacing, gave him more control, gave him a big shot maker. You look at Donovan Mitchell, had another all-star caliber season, which he was. Didn't get to that all-NBA level yet, but he's still showing signs that he can possibly get there. You got Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year again, but he did have a slightly decent defensive season in the playoffs and pretty much became an All-NBA All-Star again on both ends of the All-NBA first team and defensive team. So he pretty much lived up to what he usually does, and that's good for them. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Mike Conley, as Conley might not get the money he wants, might have to take a little less, but he also was an all-star. He was able to fit in perfectly, give them shot creation, give them a playmaker, a solid defender at their position, and a guy you can get the ball to in the pick and roll or isolation. He can get you a bucket. Those guys are always valuable. Jordan Clarkson was able to be 6th man of the year. He was more efficient, more aggressive this season. They let him do his thing. He also showed signs as a better shooter, was able to create and take more difficult shots and still knock them down efficiently. And you usually don't see that happen with a player like Clarkson, but he was able to put the work in and become that player, and he ultimately got rewarded for it. So I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. But he did have some bad shooting games in the playoffs, and you can't really have it. You need you to be the same player, if not better, in the postseason. And we didn't get enough of that from Conley, or you can also say Clarkson. But, it happens, and that's why you use your 2 stars to carry it. And Gobert and Donovan Mitchell ultimately fell short. They was up big in the playoffs, but just couldn't finish it and close it off. close it out. And instead, they went home early in the second round, which a lot of people didn't see, but it ended up happening, even if the Clippers had Paul George, had Kawhi Leonard or not. And that's a little bit disappointing. And you look at the Suns. I'm happy for this team. Everybody was in on Devin Booker. Everybody was going in on him. Everybody was taking shots at him. You get Chris Paul, had some success in the bubble. Aiden became, a way better player in the playoffs than he was in the regular season. Became a better defender, was able to finish good around the rim, could post up, can hit mid ranges, can hit free throws. Mikal Bridges was able to hit some mid ranges and some threes, get out in transition, cut to the basket, high IQ player, perfect role player for Devin Booker and Chris Paul, who they seem like they want to re-sign. This free agency wants to start. And they got good pieces. Cameron Johnson was good for them. They got to see how much money they willing to give Cameron Payne, who was on the verge of being out of the league, but was able to stay in the league because of connections, and he played and was worth it. As he was one of the big reasons why they were successful in the playoffs. Had some big games when Chris Paul was out, and some big games when Chris Paul was in, especially against the Lakers. And I would hopefully like to see him get a longer term deal and get a little bit more money, because he really played his heart out and his soul out in the playoffs. And then you look at the rest. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Kaminsky. I think you let him walk and get somebody better. Devin Booker's already under contract. DeAndre Ayton is going to be in for a big payday. Mikal Bridges is going to be in for a big payday. And we're going to have to see how much money they're going to get. But that's your core. This is the team that got you to the finals. Those was the guys that stepped up the most outside of Cameron Payne. And these are the guys you're going to have to pay and just continue to rotate guys in and out around them and live with the results. So the Suns, they was good on offense, got better offensively in the playoffs than they was in the regular season to me. And defensively, they was better than I thought. I didn't really look at them as a team that can be a lockdown defensive team, but that's what they was in the regular season, and that's what they was also in the playoffs. So they took that bubble run, upgraded the talent base a little bit, and made a finals run. So that's the best case scenario outside of winning it all. And they came close. It's going to be a little bit tougher for them to do it again next year. But these guys got to continue to put the work in. These guys got to continue to challenge themselves to get better and hold each other accountable as a team. And if they do that, they can still be dangerous. So I got to give them credit for that. And I love what they did this season. Same with the Jazz. Same with the Sixers. They had a lot of controversy, had a lot of chaos. And even though they did crumble and falter in the playoffs, they was able to have the number one team in the East. So we're going to see if the Bucks can get back to the finals, if they can get back to the conference finals. Injuries helped them, and they took advantage of them. The Nets injuries hurted them, and it crippled them and stopped them from getting far. And the Lakers injuries hurted them and crippled them, and that stopped them from even getting out of the first round. And, even Denver injuries hurted them. They didn't have Jamal Murray, and they just couldn't score enough against the Suns, and they fell. And teams like Dallas are still trying to make the move to get over the hump. Teams like the Clippers are just trying to keep things together because they know that Kawhi Leonard will miss majority of the year, so they can't really go all in because their best player won't be available for majority of the year. And when he does come back, he won't be able to be his same self because it takes a little bit of time to do it. And you got to be patient with that. But other than that, thanks for everybody chilling with me. Thanks for everybody coming to hear what I thought. This is the guys that's going to be the free agents. These are the guys that everybody going to want. I was able to cover basically everything that I've seen so far. Was able to cover a lot of rumors. Was able to talk about every single team in the NBA, what they should do, what they could do, what they did this season, and who they can bring in and what they're missing. And ultimately, I'll be up Monday covering every single sign-in for basically all of free agency like I usually do. Thanks for everybody subscribing. Thanks for everybody that continued to be subscribed throughout the years. Thanks for everybody that liked. Thanks for everybody that continued to watch throughout this long hour special that I usually never go live. I decided to go live today. Quinn Wade, holding down analysisplayground.com. Also holding down basketball analysis, which this is being streamed from. Had a lot of fun tonight. Enjoyed it. And it's a lot of activity that's going to be happening next week and the week after that. We're gonna see the teams that really want that ship, who really gonna put all their chips on the table to win that ship. We seen Milwaukee do it, trading for PJ Tucker, trading for Drew Holiday, and it worked for them. We seen the Suns going after Chris Paul, and it worked for them to get to the finals. And now we've seen the Lakers already making a trade to get Russell Westbrook. That was a big move because of his name. And now we're going to see other moves that's going to be made. Like I said, the Heat making moves already to try to get Kyle Lowry to up their chances of winning the championship. And when I look at a lot of these teams, there's only going to be one team that's going to hold that Larry O'Brien. And will it be the Nets? Will it be the Lakers? Will it be Boston? Will it be Miami? Will it be Philly? Will it be Phoenix? We don't know. But this is why free agency is important. This is why the draft is important, because you need these players. You need these moves to get you to that point. Obviously, we will still have trade deadline. Obviously, we will still have the buyout candidates in that area. But ultimately, the nucleus and the foundation of your team is built through the draft and free agency. And we get to see that. The draft already passed. Free agency is about to start tomorrow. And I'll be up all day giving y'all content as fast as I can. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. Quinn Wade, Basketball Analysis. I'm done.